Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to return to Germany and we're going to a very famous beer region once again. We're going to return to Franken in Bayern, or Franconia in Bavaria if you want to translate it into English, and we're going to the little village of Hallerndorf once again, which is home to Gänstaller Bräu. So this one is my second review from this brewery, and this beer should be really quite interesting. The Zoigl that I had from them last time was really good, but tonight we're going to have a taste of the Schwarze, which is an imperial stout, and it comes in at 11.9% ABV. So this beer will be really interesting. It got a 97 overall in rate beer. Like I said, the Zoigl that I tried from these guys before was really damn good, and it is cool to see these kind of new wave German craft breweries opening up even in places like Franconia, which are very traditional. If you don't know about Franconia, this is a region in the northern part of Bavaria that has something crazy like 300 breweries. So it's the most densely it's the area in the world that has the highest density of breweries per head of population. It's a really beautiful part of the world, and Bamberg, of course, is probably the most famous town. They're home to the likes of Schlenkeria, Spezial and Meerbräu and all of these sorts of things. So it's a very good beer area, and somewhere that I really do recommend you visit if you find yourself in Germany. But a big thank you to my friend Daniel, who is from that area, of course, or lives in that area. He was the one that gave me this beer, so a big thank you to him for providing me with this beer, and I hope you guys watching enjoy my take on it. So anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, of course, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews I've done from Gänstaller Bräu before. Hopefully I can do more of those for you in the near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city or state, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the German beers that I've reviewed for you, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys, and the support that you give the channel is hugely appreciated. And also, if you are watching in Germany, do make sure you check out my friend Peter over at the Clueless Drinker. He reviews a lot of these kind of new wave German craft beers that are coming out. He's got a really nice channel over there with a nice little bit of video editing and stuff, and he always makes me smile when I watch his videos. So if that's what you're interested in, do make sure you check out his channel. I'll put the link in the description below as well. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Gänstaller Bräu then. So as I mentioned to you, Gänstaller Bräu is located in the small village of Hallerndorf in Franconia in northern Bavaria in Germany. This municipality has a population of around 4,000 people, and it's actually part of the Forchheim district, which is about halfway between Bamberg to the north and Erlangen to the south. The closest big city to this part of the world, of course, is Nuremberg, which is of course really quite nice by itself. So that gives you a better kind of point of reference if you're wondering where we're talking about. So the Hallerndorf municipality incorporates Hallerndorf, Willersdorf, Schneid, Palsfeld, Schlammersdorf and also Trausdorf as well. But this brewery itself is in the little town of Schneid, and it was founded by Andreas Gänstaller in 2011. So Andreas apparently had been brewing as a hobby since the age of 15, and he'd previously been managing, he'd been the managing director of one of the other breweries in Bamberg, and he also later led a brewery in the Steigerwald before founding his own company in 2011. So the brewery is in the old bottling building of Brauerei Friedel, who had previously produced beer in Schneid for a number of centuries, but they moved to a new brewery in 2007, and Andreas leased this building since 2011 when he founded Gänstaller Bräu. So they currently produce around 1,500 hectolitres of beer per year, and they've got plans to expand this to around 5,000 hectolitres of beer per year as well. And like I mentioned to you, these guys are a really interesting brewery because they do brew a lot of the new kind of American styles of beer, which for a long period of time wasn't so common in Germany. But like I said, if you go and watch Peter's channel, he's picking up a lot of these breweries like Pirate Brew Berlin and various others that are starting to brew these American style beers. They're not so much following the Reinheitsgebot, of course, but they're doing some really interesting stuff on there, and that's quite an exciting beer scene to watch actually, because obviously the Germans have a real kind of expertise when it comes to brewing. So it is kind of interesting to see what they do when they're not kind of brewing in accordance with the Reinheitsgebot. So interesting times to come from Germany. The quality of the craft beer coming out there is really good, and of course Germany is one of the countries that has some really damn good traditional beer. So as you know, German beer is very good quality. That's the message that you want to take away from this, and this is a brewery who you definitely want to keep an eye on. So yeah, that's all you need to know about the brewery just now. As I said, all the links and stuff are in the description below, so if you want to read more about Gänstaller Bräu, you can check out all of those. So yeah, let's get on to the tasting of this beer itself now. So as I mentioned to you, this one is an 11.9% Imperial Stout. It didn't say on the website exactly exactly what hops and things were going into this one, but it should be a really interesting beer. Like I mentioned, it had a 97 overall on Rate Beer when I checked it out, and it's described on the bottle as being an Imperial Stout Lager, and Daniel said that this is one of the strongest beers that's produced in the Franconia region. So yeah, it should be a really interesting one, this, and once again a huge thank you to him for bringing this beer over for me. So yeah, just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one. There you can see it's quite similar to the artwork that was on the Zoigl, of course. The Gänstaller Bräu symbol is this kind of goose thing up here, which is really nice. I'm not sure what the word for goose in German is actually, but there you can see it's on the top label as well. And this one does seem to have one of these generic bottle caps on it. I'm sure the Zoigl one that I had a black bottle cap with the G on it, of course, which was really cool actually. Product of Germany, Gänstallerbräu.de. 11.9% like I mentioned to you. It doesn't really say much on the back, but one of the interesting points I picked up about this beer was that it says this beer is best before the 12th of October 2018. So for a beer that's got 11.9%, that seems like a very, very short shelf life. I would have thought this one would have lasted for at least 5 years, and I mean, Daniel gave me this one just 2 or 3 weeks before I'm actually filming the review. Today is the 11th of June. And so this one's only got a shelf life of about 2.5 years, or 1.5 years rather, which is actually which is quite interesting. As I say, that's a very short shelf life for a beer that has such a high alcohol content, especially an Imperial Stout. But let's get this guy open then, and we'll get on with the tasting. So yeah, nice little smoky opening on this, and you can smell some of that nice chocolatey, licoricey kind of character coming out of it. But we'll get this guy out, and we'll get it into the glass and see how we get on then. It's actually quite a red, it looks quite red actually for an Imperial Stout. It looks like it's a kind of nice chestnutty colour. Just as it's coming out of the bottle there, it seems to have quite this kind of reddish chestnut colour to it, rather than being a sort of black ebony rosewood. So yeah, should be quite an interesting one. Right, so if I hold this beer up to the light, it actually does seem a little bit more kind of, as I was mentioning, a little bit more chestnutty and red in comparison to some of the other Imperial Stouts that I've come across before. The head on this one is very, very thin. It's just a quarter finger or so of a very frothy, thin, beige, tan sort of foamy layer to it. There's 1 or 2 big bubbles on the bottom sides of the glass, and you can see a few of the little ones just going up towards the bottom of the head there. It does actually have this kind of rye bread note to it, and there's some chocolate just coming out as I kind of move the beer around. But it does look kind of roughly what you would expect from an Imperial Stout. As I said, the thing that surprised me with this one is the kind of chestnutty colour that it has, rather than being a really dark ebony rosewood colour. But it looks very, very nice, so we'll take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on. So yeah. Ooh. That smells really, really boozy actually. You can get some straight up fumes from that as you take a look at the aroma. But it smells really good. There's almost a little bit of a, honestly, I'm getting a little bit of meaty character out of this as I smell it. That's the first thing that struck me, is it has a little bit of that kind of meaty note into it, which is quite interesting. Yeah, but yeah, with this one, it's a really dark, kind of big boozy aroma, which at 11.9% is what you would expect. But yeah, definitely some nice kind of toasted brown sugars in there. There's definitely a presence of kind of treacle, molasses sort of things, as the Americans would call it, that really dark sort of syrupy brown sugar. There's a lot of that coming out of this beer. It's slightly toasted as well. There's a little bit of an almost licoricey note, but that's quite minimal. For me, it's leaning more towards the kind of brown sugars, and it's got a little bit of that kind of meaty, almost rauch malty character to it, but it's nowhere near as kind of strong as you're going to get from a straight up Rauch beer. That's one of the more kind of subtle notes in it, but that was the first impression that came to me when I was smelling this beer. But definitely there's some chocolate in there as well. It's kind of a mixture between milky chocolate and also some of the kind of darker, almost cocoa notes actually. But yeah, I think there's a wee bit of licorice in there. There's definitely a kind of sort of woody, oaky, vanilla sort of thing coming out of this beer as well. It's got a little bit of that kind of oaky spice character. There's a lot going on in this aroma. So particularly with this one, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you actually get stuck into it. Because there's a lot going on in here. there's a wee bit of earthy hop, and there's a good little presence of kind of red fruity esters as well. It's got a little bit of that raisiny and kind of plummy sharpness to the beer. So there's a lot going on in this one. Take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this beer, because it is really quite complex. And this is, as I say, it's not often you come across an Imperial Stout from Germany at the moment. That'll probably change within the next few years. And Peter, of course, at the Clueless Drinker might debate me on that one, because he's probably comes across them fairly often. But for me at least, finding an Imperial Stout from Germany is quite rare. But it's a lovely smelling beer, this one. Just, as I say, take a little bit of time and enjoy this. It's really just interesting how everything goes together, but it's a big kind of boozy nose that you're getting off this one. It really is very, very nice. And I just like how everything goes together. To me, it's leaning towards these big kind of caramel notes that you can smell the sort of woody, oaky notes coming out of it as well, and some of that red fruit and chocolate. It just, everything in the aroma of this beer goes together very, very well. So just enjoy it before you try it. But let's get stuck into this beer then. So this one is the Schwarze Black 90 from Gänstaller Bräu in Hallerndorf in Franconia, or Franken, in Bayern in Germany. So once again, a big thank you to Daniel for giving me this beer, and I hope it's a good one. Slàinte, Prost. Yeah. That's a pretty damn good beer. It's definitely got a different feel to it than some of the Imperial Stouts that I've come across before, and I can see what they mean when they're saying an Imperial Stout lager. It's kind of strange because it's got this very creamy yet really light mouthfeel to it. That's very unusual for an Imperial Stout. Normally you expect it to be a kind of big, oily, sort of syrupy beer. This one has all the flavour that you would expect from one of these big beers, of course, but it's just got a really light, kind of creamy mouthfeel. That's a really interesting kind of combination, actually, and it kind of shows you that Gänstaller, of course, can play around with recipes and stuff. And as I said, the Zoigl that they did before, I was really impressed with that, and this one is quite an intriguing beer. I have to say that straight off on this one, even just with one sip. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and just sugar the beer around your palate and let your whole mouth adjust to this one before you actually start to analyse the flavour too much. But this is really good. I mean, the hops are fairly straight up. It does taste a little bit like it's got the German kind of noble hops in it. So in the back corners of the palate you can definitely get a nice big bit of earthiness there. There's a little bit of bitterness to it as well. As you come further forward you can feel that sort of smoothing out. There's maybe a little tiny bit of a herbal quality to the beer, and you can feel a little bit more earthy bitterness around the front corners of your palate. And maybe it's just a little touch grassy around the front curve of your tongue as well. So the hops are kind of pretty much what you'd expect. All the complexity to this one is in the middle of your palate. So you can feel a little bit of that kind of pale, almost Pilsner malty character just blanket in the middle of your tongue. But underpinning all of that, there's a really kind of strong, quite robust black roasty malt character to this beer, and that suits it down to the ground. There's a lot going on in this one. As you go further and further into the aftertaste, that kind of roasty black malt character just lingers there in this one. There's definitely not the, as far as I can tell so far, there's definitely not that sort of smoky note that I was picking up in the aroma. But yeah, that's a really pretty damn good beer. I have to say that straight up. You know, if this is the standard of Imperial Stouts that they can produce in Germany, which isn't surprising considering the expertise that Germany as a country has in brewing, you know, if they can brew these beers, they've got a great future ahead of them when it comes to the kind of American style craft beers. They've done Gänstaller have done a great job with this, and I'm not surprised considering what they did with the Zoigl. So this kind of shows you they can brew these new world styles of beers, and they can brew the kind of traditional Franken style of beers to a very, very high standard. So this is a brewery, as I say, that you definitely want to check out because they do a whole variety of different things. Yeah, that's really nice. So as I mentioned, you've got this roasted black malt character there just underpinning this beer, but as your mouth adjusts more and more to it, that kind of mellows out a little bit and you start to get more of the kind of sweet aspects to it. There's a lot of brown sugar in there. It is actually quite toasted. For me, the brown sugars are leaning a little bit more towards the kind of darker treacle molasses sort of thing. As the flavour moves further and further into the aftertaste, you can pick out a little bit of this kind of woody, slightly oaky, sort of spicy character in there. There's a little bit of sweetness in the middle of the palate too. It's a kind of milky, sort of chocolatey character that's coming out of this one, which is really nice. And the thing I would say about this is that for 11.9%, especially when it's got the mouthfeel that's as light as this, it covers the alcohol really, really well. If you were blind tasting this one, I think it would be quite hard to guess that it was up there at just under 12%. It's a really, really intriguing beer, this one. It's not like anything else that I've come across before. I think it's fair to say this is probably the lightest Imperial Stout that I've come across in terms of mouthfeel. But it's really nice. There's a lot going on in it, but it definitely, in terms of the Imperial Stout category, for me it definitely leans more towards the kind of roasty, toasty, bitter side of things. But there is a little bit of chocolate sweetness and sort of caramel, treacle, molasses sort of thing in this one. Like I was mentioning, there is a little bit of earthy hop bitterness as well. So if you like your Imperial Stouts to lean towards that roasty, bitter side of things, this one really is going to hit the spot for you. There's a good bit of red fruity character to this one as well. So as I always say, just behind the very front curve of the tongue, you've got that little oily bubble that comes that you'll feel forming, and that's where these red fruity esters come out. And to me, it's interesting because when you move further into the aftertaste on this one, you get a little bit of that kind of candied red fruit. It always reminds me of those little heart-shaped sweets you get in Haribo Star Mix. It's got a little bit of that as you get further into the aftertaste, but initially it's more a sort of kind of plummy and raisiny, red, kind of slightly sharper red fruity ester that you get out of this beer. Like I said, there's a hell of a lot going on in this beer. There's a good bit of complexity, and it's quite quirky in the sense that the mouthfeel is really quite light. So it's, you know, this is a beer that you want to try for the novelty factor. It's very, very good quality, and you know, as I said, my previous experience with Gänstaller Bräu really told me that is what these, you know, what this brewery are capable of doing. So this one, it's just very unusual, and as a beer reviewer, that's exactly what you want. The thing that sets this beer apart is just that it is lighter in the mouthfeel. It's got this really light, kind of creamy mouthfeel when you think about the overall Imperial Stout category. But let's move on to the mouthfeel now. So I would say that this one is mid-bodied. It's light, as I said, for the Imperial Stout category. The carbonation on this one is very soft, actually. It almost could be, when you take this one out of the bottle, it could just be like it came out of one of these kind of it tastes like it could be a straight up Brauhaus beer, to be quite honest. It's a very creamy mouthfeel, this. It does have a little bit of oiliness as your mouth kind of adjusts to it, but mainly to me it tastes, the mouthfeel on this one is quite creamy. There's a good bit of sweetness to the malt base, but the main leanings of the malt base are kind of quite bitter. As I said, that roasty, kind of toasty black malt backbone of the beer starts to push its way out as you go further and further into the aftertaste. There's a little bit of bitterness to the hops, but that smooths out as your palate adjusts to the beer, and there's a little bit of kind of sharpness, a little bit of nice kind of juicy red fruity character to this one as well. But overall, it's a really quite intriguing beer, this one. I don't think I've had an Imperial Stout that has been as light as this in the body, but also as creamy at the same time. So overall, it's a really quite interesting beer, this one. I can see why Daniel wanted me to try this one, particularly when it's such a strong beer. But overall, I have to say to Gänstaller Bräu, once again, great job with this, and I would certainly want to try more of their beers on the basis of this one, and of course the Zoigl that I had before. And trying something that's a bit more in the American style, of course, is something that's quite interesting to me, actually. Now that I think about it, when I think of the German Schwarze beers, it almost has the kind of light mouthfeel that you would expect of one of those, but it has the flavour profile that you'd expect of an Imperial Stout. So I think that's probably a good way to kind of summarise this review, is that this one, it's in terms of flavour, it's an American kind of Imperial Stout, but in terms of the mouthfeel, it's more like a German Schwarze beer. I think that's maybe what they were going for, so I can see exactly what they were meaning on the label of this one when they say an Imperial Stout Lager. So they've done a really quite intriguing job of this. That's just come into my head right at the end of this video, so I'm glad I thought of that before I finished filming. But overall, it's another great beer from these guys, and like I said, this is a brewery that you definitely want to check out from the Franconia region. So yeah, all I can say is this is a really, really good beer, so make sure you check out this brewery. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Thank you to Daniel for giving me this beer, of course, and if Peter's watching, I do hope he can review this one for himself sometime, because it really is one of the more intriguing beers that I've come across from Germany in recent times, and he reviews a lot of these beers, of course. But if you get the chance to try this one, I highly recommend you do. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below if you have tried it yourself. Let me know what your favourite ones are from Gänstaller Bräu, of course, because they seem to be doing a hell of a lot of different beers. But thank you once again for watching. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff, and I will catch you very soon with more beer reviews. Make sure you check out Gänstaller Bräu from Hallerndorf in Franconia, Franken in Bavaria in southern Germany. Sorry, I can't speak at the end of this video, but this is a really top class brewery who I do think you should check out. Thank you once again to Daniel for this beer, and make sure you check out for yourselves. Slàinte just now. Prost.